Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our next episode of Tiger Eye Talk. Today, I have with me Dr. Joe Burns and one of my team members, Roberta. We are going to have a conversation around money. Dr. Joe Burns is the expert in the money area. Um, he is Joe is indomitable. He is yet heartfelt, genuine approach mixed with his signature dad joke humor makes him approachable, allowing him to capture the room. He creates a safe space for audiences to open up and engage in the money topics that we usually do avoid. And he believes money should be fun. As yes, it should. I agree. He is an expert at making complex ideas simple and using hot seat coaching to get everyone a breakthrough. His message of disruption, taking money and using its simple, actionable steps to achieve the impact entrepreneurs desire, has been heard around the globe. So help me welcome Dr. Joe Burns. Thank you, Joe, for being here today.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks for having me here. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Awesome. So to start us off, tell us a little bit about maybe something people may misunderstand about what it is that you do.
Oh, the big thing people always misunderstand is they think I'm going to help them with like investments or their budget or all those kind of tactical money things that we do in life, which I would always label kind of like the money IQ side, right? Those things we have to like put our brains to kind of figure out money and those pieces. So everybody thinks that's what I do, and that's not what I do at all. I have a budget. I have people who help me with investments because I'm not good at them either. But what I really do is kind of three categories is where I've kind of boiled it down to, right? And like I said earlier, not the money EQ or IQ side. It's more the money EQ, like the emotional side of money. So I talk a lot about money mindset, money trauma, and then money and racism. And that's more the cultural or systemic pieces that we kind of run into that we've created as a society or within the small communities of our family or maybe our area where we grew up, those kind of things of, kind of how that affects us from a money perspective. So, really how you think, how you feel about money and how it's affected you from an outside perspective.
Awesome. Just from background with you, because since I do know you and I've experienced your coaching before, tell us a little bit about how you use talking to money within your business and
that's always a good one. Because I talk to money and people find that weird.
At first I did, I'll be honest. But now that I do it, I understand it.
And that's the thing, right? And it's kind of funny how it kind of came to be, but it's just, I say, hey, a lot of times I'll use that as like an elevator pitch or something like, hey, I'm Joe Burns. I talk to money and it talks back. And people like stop dead in their tracks. Like, wait, what? Like,
what are you talking about?
Like, you actually talk to your money? I'm like, yeah, don't you? And they just look there and be like, no, that's kind of weird. I'm like, cool, let's talk about that. But the whole philosophy behind that, right, is if we're going to have this relationship with money, and that's really where people start. Like the first thing I can ever give you, like most people have a really bad relationship with money. And that kind of bleeds over into the IQ side as well, right? We talk that, like, that's why we don't do budgets, right? Because every time we sit down and look at a budget, we get triggered, and who wants to be triggered and have these emotions? So we just like put it off, and then, we'll overspend or whatever in our bank account. And then that number is messing with us. And so there's all this relationship we have that's pretty, in a lot of cases, probably toxic for a lot of people, right? When it comes to money. So the first place to start is like, I think of money as like a friend. And it's like, if we want our friends to stick around, then we got to talk to them. We got to invite them over. We got to have some in our lives. One of the first things I have all my clients do is like go to the bank and get some cash. Like actually have some cash. I always have cash laying around.
This is on my desk.
I have currently sitting as closest to me. I have like a $2 bill, right? It's kind of fun. You're just sitting there. But have some money, right? Even if it's $1, like it doesn't matter. Right. And literally sit down and just have a conversation with it. It's, I mean, now if we get literal, it's not going to literally talk back to you. And, little guys on it aren't going to like start speaking to you, but you're going to have impressions on things, right? That you can pick up as the questions you ask it. And it starts that relationship. And that's the part. It's about creating a better relationship with money so that it can work with us instead of against us.
Absolutely. And that's awesome how it can do that. if you start developing that relationship, for sure.
Yeah, right.
You spoke a little bit about budgets. Now, is that an area that you also help your clients with, or no?
Nope, I don't help with budgets at all. Like,
Okay.
I'll talk to you about how your budget makes you feel. Like, I mean, so I have budget conversations, but to say, hey, here's this system, here's this budget, go do that. Like, I found other people to help with that. Like, if someone needs a system, because it is, I mean, a budget's just a system. But
Right.
again, like I said, how you feel about your budget, how you feel about what that makes you do, what you feel like you can do or can't do with it. Now that's an interesting conversation always, right? So we'll have conversations like that for those who do have budgets to be like, okay, cool. You know, how does your budget make you feel? What are you doing with it? Where do you think you can improve it? Right. And let them kind of just experience sitting in those emotions as they're doing it. Right. Because
Right.
I don't know about you, but Debbie and I we've had a budget. Now, do we follow it all the time? No. But have we followed it, or do we have a budget? We've had one since we got married, right? We've always done that. And it's been an interesting evolution of how the conversation's gone from the beginning of our marriage to now, right? And for those who don't know, Debbie's my wife. We this year, because 2022, we've been married 21 years.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
Nice.
Thanks.
Congrats.
So it's been a long, like, you know, we've been ups and downs, and but you know, when you look at that one relationship around budgets. So again, having a conversation is always important with your spouse, your significant other who's also being affected by that budget. But again, like, how do we feel? And that's, I think, the biggest part, because if we can be honest about how we feel when we like dive into something like a tool with a budget, then we can start to understand how we think about money, how it makes us feel, right? Because it's just gonna reflect back all those things, right? A lot of people see these tools, right, in the money world as like, oh no, they're just numbers, and numbers are absolute, this blah 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 blah. Well, yeah, I mean, it's math, right? It's
Right.
numbers, but there's also a very emotional component mixed in with that we just kind of discount because we're like, I don't know, because it is numbers, right? And because the world has taught us that numbers are absolute. This is what it is, right? Math is just math. They like to challenge that, right? I like to say, hey, there's emotions attached to this. So let's ask ourselves, how do I feel about what this number looks like, right? Where do I feel it in my body? Do I feel like I'm compelled to do something because of this, right? There's lots of different things we can get into from just a simple thing like a budget, right?
Yep.
And it's just, again, like I said, being honest with ourselves really overall to say, hey, how do I feel? How do I honestly feel? Because it probably most of the time, if we're looking at our budgets, most of us aren't making the money we want to be making. So it probably sucks, right? We look at that and we're like, oh, this is all we got, right? Okay. What do I got to do to make more? How do I make the stretch? Right? And
Yes.
that's honest. Like, and as the sooner we can be honest with ourselves about how we feel, then we can solve for that, right? And we can start to, you know, look for other solutions to solve for the gaps that we have.
Awesome. Roberta, you have some questions for Joe?
Yeah. Well, I would say sometimes it feels like a heavy weight on your shoulders where you're so worried about that next dollar. Where's it coming from? And instead of worrying, sometimes it seems like through your training, it's more of the mindset focus on, I can make a change. And I think that's where talking to your money makes a difference. If I'm looking at it in the right way, it's like, hey, I'm going to make twice as much as what I'm going to give you some friends to play with on the desk.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it's mindset. So it's hard though.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, right? As you talked, Roberta, just a little bit, right? You feel that pressure on your shoulders, right? Because there's a mindset component. The more interesting conversation I always like to have is what's the trauma response, right? When we start feeling things in our bodies, like that pressure on our shoulders, the pit in our stomach, those kind of things, that's usually like a trauma response, right? That we've had some negative association with money. So, you know, when we're saying, oh, you know, where does our next dollar come from, especially as entrepreneurs, right? Because we're always looking for our payments, hopefully, right? We have good clients and they're going to pay us, but it's like, we're wanting to grow, right? So it's like, where's that next client coming from? Right. And so it's going to elicit some type of response. So yes, mindset's one of it. It's like, hey, can I even do this? Yes, I can. Okay, cool. Right. And we got to sometimes remind ourselves more than once that yes, we can do this. We can keep moving. But the action part is interesting to always watch because it's usually attached to trauma, whether we do or don't do something, right? And that's important because sometimes we'll hesitate in doing something, or sometimes we'll do something that's not necessarily has the outcome we want it to have, right? But a lot of those are trauma responses. So like that pressure on the shoulders, like I said, the pit in the stomach, right? The sweaty
Heart
palm,
palpitation.
heart palpitations, right?
Right.
All these things
Right.
are the nervous system reminding us that, hey, something bad happened last time we were in a similar situation. Okay. So we have to remember that it's not the exact same situation, but that similar situation, and it's triggering things inside of us. So again,
Yes.
like, I mean, there's a whole world like we could go into, but again, just I think more than anything, paying attention to how we feel and like cataloging that, capturing it somehow is really important, right? Because then we can start to see patterns in our lives, and it's like, oh, why do I do this, right? Asking ourselves why is really important, because then we can start to find solutions for why we feel like we do. Why did we take that action? Why did we do, X, Y, and Z? If
Awesome.
not, then we just repeat
speaking of
over and over,
trauma, Since I do know you a little bit about your background, could you share a little bit of that with us? Your journey to becoming an entrepreneur for your family.
Yeah. So it's it's been an interesting many years. Debbie and I both we started a business actually back in like 2007. It was a computer consulting business, right? And we started building it because my whole career, right, had been IT, and that's also kind of, people always say, Joe, if you did IT for like, your whole career, why are you doing money coaching, right? And there was a shift that happened. It kind of is the story, right? So 2008 was the worst year and the best year for us, right? And a lot of people are like, oh, when we start telling the story, like, oh, the 2008 financial crisis in the United States, and they're like, is that why? And I'm like, well, no, actually, I never lost my job, right? Nothing really bad happened as far as income went that way. But Debbie was held up at gunpoint 2 times in about 6 weeks at her job. She worked at a small credit union. It was the same guy. And there's a lot of trauma that came up around that, right? A lot of PTSD, a lot of childhood trauma that was revisited. I always look at my explanation of her PTSD, right? Because trauma's all different for everybody, right? We experience it different. But I kind of like all the stuff that she had experienced growing up. I kind of feel like you kind of put it was like she had neatly packaged it in like kind of little tinder box, right? A little small box. And when that happened, it just like smashed it open, right? And everything was out. So we spent the next many years working on that. Through the process, we moved from Utah to Maryland. I got a different job. Thinking that, hey, we just need more income. She can't work anymore, really. So we went from a 2-income house to a 1-income house. I moved across the country and started making a lot more. Like I got a $30,000 a year raise from changing jobs, which was pretty cool. Except for we moved from Utah to Maryland, and cost of living was way higher, and we didn't have Debbie's income anymore, right? So we kind of we were super naive in the process. We're just like, we got to get away from here. If we can just get away from the trauma, right, and the place where it happened, then maybe we'll be okay. That was our first mistake, because you can't run from trauma. It's going to follow you. But what happened through the whole process, which is really cool, is I learned a lot about money. Right. And we'd been out there for a couple of years, and I went from making I went out there for like $82,000 a year at my job. And I had worked my way up and got some raises, and I was making about $106,000. And I remember this point really clearly still, right? And this is like 2010 timeframe. But it's really where if I look back at it, where I learned the most about money and really how my framework and what I teach today. Right. So that's why this is relevant. But I was making $106,000 a year. I had broken the $100,000 a year, right? It's the promised land. Everybody thinks that oh, once you hit that, that's, the big thing.
You get gold.
You have, right? I mean, but so there's so many things that go into that. And I'm just like, because like back in the 80s, 100,000 was a lot. But I mean, we're 2022, like inflation and all the craziness and the pressures of all this other stuff makes it so that it's not that much better now. Right. but like my brain didn't even trigger that. It's like, oh, I hit it, right? Because that's what's ingrained in us. Oh, we hit the promised land. We can just like nothing should be hard anymore, right? But at that point in time, I still had to, like, our bills were so much, the extra medical we had, like all this stuff, cost of living was way more. And I remember going to my local church leader and asking for help, right? I couldn't pay all our bills anymore and feed ourselves. So they were like super helpful. They're like, okay, cool. You know, we'd help with some food and this kind of stuff and help just kind of stabilize us. But it took a lot, right? My own trauma and my own ego and where I thought I should be, right? As I made that amount of money, that I
Pride
shouldn't
gets in the
have
way, for
problems
sure.
anymore, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what society teaches us. They're like, if you make this amount of money, you shouldn't have any problems. It should also go away. Our problems were all just different.
Yeah.
Right. So I look back at it and looking at how I made it work, how I was able to create this relationship with money in a way that helped propel us out of that. Right. And then things just got better from there. Right. Debbie, her mental health started getting better. We learned how to manage it, how to deal with it. And then I got more raises and you know, started creating more income, which was really cool. Right. And so I'm like, oh, what did I do to make this happen? Right. As I went back and started looking at it. So I started mapping the steps of what I did. I'm like, okay, you know, I did X, Y, and Z. I did this. And then maybe not in that particular order, but kind of just like mixed it around. And I'm like, cool. A few years later, we ran into this this mentor in Salt Lake after we moved back. And I started getting in the personal development world. And that's kind of how the money coaching came in. I'm like, oh, cool. I can use these personal development things with like how I view money in this relationship and kind of mix the two. And it's kind of crazy that when you do that and you start making those changes around how you see money, you start making more, right? And I would say even on the other side is that my main goal for my clients is not even to help them make money. It ends up being a byproduct of the work we do together.
Awesome.
So, you know, all that was like a crazy long, you know, this 10-year journey. But it's been
But it got you to where you are today.
It has. And there's been ups and downs, right? So to say, hey, you know, everything is just like after we figured things out, it's just been hearts and roses. I'm like, well, that's not the entrepreneurial life, right? There's still ups and downs and things like that. But it's again, understanding what it is that you really want and going after that. And then just having the stamina and tenacity to make it happen, right? Because a lot of us as entrepreneurs, we might have a bad month and we're like, oh, maybe I should just give it up. Maybe I should go back and get a job. You know, it gets tough sometimes.
It does.
Right.
It sure does.
And it's gotten tough for us throughout the years. And you know, at some point, right, at one point in this journey, I left the corporate world. I actually got laid off. And I'm like, okay, cool. I got the severance package. So we had some money in the bank. And I'm like, cool, let's do this. But my business wasn't ready to go yet, right? So I had to go back for a bit. So, I mean, there's no shame in having to go, you know, if you want to do the entrepreneur, go back. It's just understanding what your goals are and what you really want to accomplish.
And everybody's in a different place.
They are.
You know, when they start, even as they start moving forward in their business, everybody's business is different. Everybody is different, and they're going to handle it differently as they go through that process.
Yeah, you can look at other people and as, you know, be like, okay, cool, they're going to give me a framework and it kind of works like this and it might work for me like that or tweak it. But yeah, we're all different. We experience things different. We have different situations. So, you know, there's never any shame in any of that. But it's really, again, understanding how we operate, how we feel, and taking care of that. Because as we do that, our relationships in our lives get better. You know, money's one of those relationships, but with our families, with our coworkers, with our clients, and life just starts to be a lot better, you know.
So over the course of being an entrepreneur, I know you've done this for quite a few years now, and worked with various clients. What is the best compliment you've ever received, maybe from, you know, one of your past clients?
Man,
I'm sure you have quite a few to choose from.
I have a bunch. Really, at the end of the day, kind of one of the best stories I have is a client that she worked with me back in the very beginning, and worked with me for a bit, and then went to go do her, you know, get other coaching, whatever, and then came back to me a while ago. But the thing there was always looking back, her her goal when she first started working with me was she needed to make an extra $400 a month.
Okay.
She just needed
Awesome.
to, that was gas money basically for her husband to go to work. That's what they were missing, right? She looked at the budget, looked at the budget, and they were $400 short. So she's like, hey, how do we solve for this, right? I'm like, cool, let's walk through that, right? And then every time I talk to her, she's like, you've completely changed my life. And that's never really that's one part of my goal, but it's not like, oh, I'm going to change your life. Let's get in here and do this.
Right.
But I just want you to have a better relationship with money because I know what the side effects will be. But that's really the best. Like, and I look at it now, right? And that was many years ago. That was like 2017 when she first started working with me. Last year they bought their first house. She's made 6 figures consistently. And just living life like she wants to, right? Her and her family, and the kids speak differently now, right? And that makes my heart really happy. Like I look at that too, because the kids are starting to speak differently about money. They see it different. Her husband's totally on board and he's changed a lot of stuff. So just seeing like the effects, right? And I have it's so hard sometimes because I always like compare it to like health coaches. Health coaches have it easy, I think, right? You take the before and after picture and there's your results, right?
Yep.
And with the money stuff, yeah, I mean, I have my clients take like a snapshot of their bank account and we look at financials over the course of time. They're working with me, that kind of stuff. So it gives some type of thing. But I really try to stress to them, look back at where you came from, look back where you were just a few weeks ago, a few months ago, and where you're at now. Because I don't get the cool snapshot of the picture, right? Pictures show a lot of stuff.
Yes.
And like with her, so just the life changing, right? The life's so much different. They're in a much different place, in a place they never thought they would be, right? And it makes my heart it makes my heart happy. Where you can take a family where they just needed, like, their biggest problem was $400 a month.
Yeah.
Right.
Just to make that extra $400. Yeah.
An extra $400. Right. And to some people, that's like $400. Like that's simple. Like you go do X, Y, Z. Right.
Some people, that's not that easy.
It's not right. They feel strapped. So to see from that and see the evolution of where they're at now. And that's just a few years, right? Where are they going to be in another 10 years, another 20 years, right? But you still just like, because of the way they've changed how they interact with money, how they interact with themselves and their relationships has changed so drastically that they'll never go back to that, right? It's not possible. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah, that's probably the best. I get all kinds of, I have the best too, I would have to say, is when past clients just randomly send me a text and like, oh my gosh, like I came across what we learned, or here's my new win of like this last quarter because things are just like crazy. Just seeing like, even though they're not working with me at the time, that they're continuing to see results from the work we've done.
Awesome. That's amazing.
As all coaches and people who do what I do, we don't always get to see the end result, right? So it's fun to like get those little snippets or emails or something. Some people will respond to my newsletter and be like, oh, here's what's going on. Or just to get those. And they always worry that they're bothering me, right? They're like, oh, I'm not sure if I can send this, but I'm going to send it anyways because it's fun. I'm like, no, send them to me. Like, I really like it because I don't always get to see the end result, like I said.
That's amazing.
And to see that, even years later, their lives are still being affected by the change they made, right? And I want to be, again, I'm just a coach. I'm just telling them to go do things, giving them ideas of like, hey, you could look at it this way. They're still implementing, right?
Absolutely.
They're still doing all this work, but it's just cool to watch. So it always makes my heart happy.
Awesome.
It keeps me going some days.
Do you have any special offers that you have going on currently within your business?
Really, it's just I have a book coming soon.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
we're working on it. And I just say soon because my goal is to have it out at the beginning of the summer, and we're in August, so it's a work in progress.
Hopefully before Christmas, we could buy it as a Christmas gift.
Yeah, it'll be out before the end of the year for sure.
Awesome. Awesome.
But for those who want to kind of get the framework I use, my whole idea around money, really, as you couldn't tell, but I remember the story back to as I was growing up. My mom always, when I needed to fix something, she's like, you just got to fix your attitude or change your attitude. Right. That's a very mom thing to say. I wasn't a troublesome child, but I pushed my parents' limits, right? I always think I always thought outside the box, right? And I always thought of like, how far can I push things? So I kind of took that same concept, right? And I have for everybody who wants to kind of do a little assessment for themselves, it's called Attitudes of Money. So you go to attitudesofmoney.com. And there's
like
an
a little
assessment.
quiz they can take.
It's like that. It's a PDF that asks you some questions and you kind of rate yourself. And it gives you, because there's 10 attitudes, and it really tells you which one to start working on first.
Awesome.
So, and then that's what the book will be, Attitudes of Money. And we'll go deeper into each attitude, really, kind of how to liken it to yourself a little bit more. Because the PDF is it's not going to give you a lot, but it's going to give you enough to get going. But that's what the book. So the book, I'm pretty excited about that.
I'm excited. I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm excited too.
Exactly. Just to get out there in another avenue for people to start changing the way they see money and how they start interacting with it. So that's
awesome.
coming, like I say, soon, but I'm not going to put a date on it because we're still kind of wrap it up the way I want it to be,
There you go.
right? Because there's a lot of pieces that are going into it that I want it to be to serve my brand and to serve, right, the people who are going to, the communities that I serve. So
Amazing. I'm so happy. I'm
yeah.
excited.
I'm excited too. I never thought I'd publish a book, but here I am doing all these things that I never thought
you
I
never
would
thought
do.
you'd do. Yes.
Yeah.
Roberta,
Right.
do you have anything you'd like to add or ask?
Well, I was going to say, this is a program that would just be amazing for the younger generation that's just struggling because, with everything and just trying to pay for college versus getting a job and trying to live their life. And so not letting money get in the way and learning, like you said, to just to understand themselves. But I'm thinking all these younger kids are going to really benefit from your book and your program.
Yeah. It's something that I see as eventually, there might be something I could do for teens, whatever, right? I don't know. Possibilities are endless.
That's
Yeah.
something they don't learn in school.
They really
You
don't,
Not at
right?
all.
that kind of thing in school to where they can learn to manage their money in the
Right.
way that they need to.
Yeah. And I look at that and I've that's something that I think the heart project for myself as time goes on. I know here in Utah, it's finally like financial literacy is finally part of the curriculum.
Oh,
Right.
wow,
I remember when I
nice.
went to school, right? And I'm 43, so I went to school, whatever in the 80s and 90s. I remember like one class where they taught us how to balance a checkbook, right? And that was kind of like the
Right.
extent. I'm like, okay, right? But that's the other part, right?
Who
When
has
you
a
look at-
checkbook anymore, right?
no, I mean it's all
Nobody
digital and
uses that.
it's all crazy.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, right? So there's a lot of ways and looking at it and just that disconnect. And I see a disconnect, right? Because we have that's a perfect, right? We've went away from using paper money and even checks, right? To just like debit cards and crypto, right? It's all like turning into this digital money.
Yeah.
And it's separating ourselves from that relationship, right? So that's why I encourage everybody again to go get some cash. Actually have some cash on you. Like, what does it feel like to actually see that? Have it instead of just being some number on a computer screen, and you just see more minuses than you see pluses on that side.
Yep.
But yeah, so there's lots of different ways, and helping that younger generation definitely is, like you said, Roberta, can be very helpful. I have a niece that every time she comes over, I don't have my stack with me. I usually have a money stack, of $10,000 that just sits here, and she'll come over and she's like, "Uncle Joe, I want to see your money." I'm like, "What, in my wallet?" Like, no. And then she'll hold her hands, right? She's like, "Your big stack." I'm like, "Oh, okay." But it's just fun, right? That the kids get it, right? As we show them things, they get it. And it's just helping them understand kind of, how they're feeling around it and walking them through those different things and hoping that they'll pick up just a little bit of it. So as they start to enter adulthood, then they can remember some of those lessons.
Yes.
So yeah, it's fun to see that. Like I said, to my other clients and listening to how their kids talk and all that, to see that it's starting to change generationally from the work I'm doing is pretty cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's
that
amazing.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And as we are, gonna close up here, how can everyone get in contact with you? How can they find you?
Yeah, that's good. Like I said, attitudesofmoney.com. Get that. You can also go josephmburns.com is my website. So you can find me there.
Awesome.
Or I'm on LinkedIn. And I don't even know what to think. If you look up Dr. Joe Burns, I'm like the only one. You can also Google Joe Burns Money Master, and my stuff pops up top on SEO. So
Money Master, that's the name of your business, correct?
no, that's
No?
that's just the title I've given myself.
Awesome. I like it.
It's a good one.
It is.
But yeah, if you Google that, then I show up on the top there. So
Awesome,
my people doing
awesome.
my SEO works well for me. So that's kind of fun.
That is so amazing. And I want to thank you so much, Joe, for being here with us today.
Yes.
You really gave us some good tips around money. And anybody that's watching this video later or here with us today, if you have money questions, contact Dr. Joe Burns, and he can definitely give you the answers you're looking for.
Cool. Yeah.
Thank
Thanks.
you so much, Joe.
Appreciate being here.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.